Hey folks, this is Kelani. It's a little surprising to me how long some of the queues for the higher population realms are lasting. I kinda figured a good chunk of the player base would get a little tired of Classic and start playing much less after a week, or at the very least they wouldn't be able to log in at all hours of the day, so the queues overall would start to dissipate. But that's not really been the case. Herod, Whitemane, Fairlina, Fairbanks, they're all still chock-a-block with players and the queues don't seem to be going anywhere anytime soon. But the first round of server transfers that Blizzard was promising have gone live, so we have that to look into and talk about for a little bit. The issue of layering is cropping up a lot more too, especially as more and more players make it to max level and can start farming some of the most lucrative items in the game. Layering is affecting that in some not so great ways. I also want to chat about something really interesting that wowhead has been doing for a few days, where they compare how popular all of their classic guides have been. I think it's a great way to get a little peek into how everyone is doing, what level the average player is about, and how invested the community is in certain aspects. So let's have a look at the layering thing first, because some people are claiming it's destroying the economy on several servers already. So what's the crack with this layering thing? It's kind of a toned down version of sharding. It doesn't affect the world in anywhere near the same way as sharding, but it has some of the same potential for abuse. Honestly, out of all of the changes to World of Warcraft over the years, I think sharding has done the most damage for all sorts of reasons. You can infinitely farm so many different resources to the point where Blizzard had to introduce limits on special collectibles like chests back in Legion and in Mechagon. If you were able to endlessly farm those specific chests, you could get way ahead of where the dev team wants you to be when it comes to resources, currencies, reputation, so many different things. When sharding was first introduced, it changed the entire game of gathering and collecting things, especially when the group finder came along with it. Being able to so easily find a group so you could move shards to collect whatever you want as long as you want is potentially very dangerous. Now you might wonder what that has to do with vanilla and classic and why it might cause so many problems. Layering does something very similar to sharding. It creates a new instance of the entire server, which includes monsters, collectibles, mining nodes, herbing nodes, fishing pools, quest mobs, rares, you name it. Now in a typical gameplay session, you shouldn't really leave the layer that you log into. It doesn't shift you around every time you change zones like sharding does, because layering creates a new instance of the entire server, which allows you to play alongside the same characters and players as long as you don't log out. That creates a bit more of an authentic experience while keeping the servers more stable. That's the entire point of layering, but you can hop across these layers if you go out of your way to do so. In fact, it's actually incredibly easy for the most part. You just need someone else who is in a different layer to invite you to a group. Changing groups or joining groups is the only way currently that you can actually change layers. Outside of that interaction, you shouldn't ever move from the layer that you're in. But at the end of the day, you need to be able to group with people on your server even if they're not in the same layer. So get someone from a different layer to invite you to a group, you'll phase across to their layer and boom, job's done. Hopefully whatever you were trying to farm has respawned and you can go about your business. If you need to hop to another layer, just find another player to invite you. By abusing the system that was implemented to ensure we could play the game a little smoother, even with multiple times the number of players who were ever capable of logging into a vanilla server back in the day, you can do things that were never possible back then. That goes against the spirit of vanilla for a lot of players, but it doesn't really matter to those who are looking to play as efficiently as possible. As you get into the later levels, you can start gathering some rare materials like thorium, arcane crystals, rune cloth, fel cloth, black lotus. You can hop across layers to make those nodes respawn more often than they should and farm mobs a lot faster. Obviously that's questionable, but the post that brought this up was kind of bogus. They said that someone had over 3,000 arcane crystals, which isn't really possible at all. That wouldn't even be possible on live servers with all the sharding you could abuse, not with the limited time frame we've had for Classic right now, but it does merit some concern. Blizzard even made a post discussing the recent claims of layering ruining the economy and determined that all of the crazy claims were fake, but they do recognize that layering is being exploited on a worrisome level. People are hopping layers to level faster, to grind quest items faster, and to farm materials faster. Even if it's not quite as efficient as some people are claiming, it still speeds things up considerably. I've heard rumors of an add-on that detects the layer that you're currently in and communicates to different players with the add-on to guarantee you a hop if they're in another layer. If that add-on is being circulated, then it's not even a guessing game anymore. You could just invite the right person to your group and you could hop layers as often as you want. Thankfully, Blizzard has said that they agree that they should implement a cooldown on hopping layers and how often you should be able to do it. That should slow down the exploiting at least a little bit, and if the cooldown is long enough, it should make it less efficient in the long run, which would defeat the purpose of hopping layers. If the respawn rate of the mobs was faster than the cooldown of hopping layers, then I guess you may as well just stay where you are. They've also hinted at a few other controls they're looking at implementing, as well as a few secret weapons they've saved in their back pocket, just in case this gets out of hand. They clearly see this as an issue, however large or small, and are working to control the potential for abuse in a variety of ways. Bear in mind that layering will eventually be turned off completely, so this problem won't last forever. I just hope it doesn't ruin anything before Phase 2. Now, moving on to the server transfer topic, if you're logging in today or sometime this weekend and you have an encounter with the dreaded server queue boss that no one seems capable of conquering right now, you should see something a little different than usual. As well as your number in queue and the blatantly wrong estimated time remaining info that you always get, you should see another message talking about free character migrations now being available. If your realm doesn't have a free transfer, you probably won't get this message, but I'm pretty sure all of the high pop realms have transfers set up, so chances are if your server doesn't have a high enough population to get the free transfer, you probably don't have a queue to sit in anyway. Either way, you won't see the message, but for everyone else you can use this prompt to check out the servers you can move to. Each server only has one destination right now, from what I understand, so you don't really have a choice about where you can go. It's dependent on what server you're already on, but you can have a look at the destination server in the realm list to see how its population is doing. I don't really fancy the idea of moving to a really low population server, so I'm going to keep an eye on Heartseeker because I'm on Fairlina and that's where our transfer is to, and I'm going to see if it pops into the medium population territory. If it stays medium for a good chunk of the day, then we'll probably end up moving there to skip over the crazy long queues on Fairlina. It's pretty frustrating having to worry about constant disconnects, locking you out of the game for several hours when there's nothing you can really do about it. I swear I've been disconnected more in the last few days than I have for the rest of Classic. Even the first day or two, where we had hundreds of people on the screen at the same time, I still didn't get disconnected as often as I have been these last couple of days. Maybe Blizzard is doing something about the players who are trying to stay connected at all costs, even though they're actually AFK. I kind of doubt it, but I do have my suspicions. So if you're playing on one of these full or high population servers and you kind of fancy a break from the whole queue thing, have a look at the blue post in the comments section below to review which servers can transfer where, and have a chat with your friends and guildies to see if the big move is something you're interested in. Less competition for mobs, less time in queue, less people overall, not as many players to group up with for quests or dungeons, less access to materials from the auction house. There are a lot of things to consider. It's a big decision for sure, so talk it over with your people before you pull the trigger. Right now the transfers will be active throughout the weekend and maybe a little bit further if no one takes the bait. The dev team also mentioned that the server transfers can be shut down at any point if the destination servers get too full, so if this is something you're seriously considering, you'll want to get it done sooner rather than later. All new character creation is disabled for a brief period of time too on the new servers, so right now the chances of keeping your name are incredibly high. After that lockout period is over, I think it's a day, anyone will be able to create new characters, so you might lose your name if you wait too long. It's super cheeky for them to put the migration option right there in the queue while you have to wait, but that's probably the best way to get people to opt in for it. When you have the choice between waiting for a few hours or simply transferring away and playing immediately, immediately, I bet a whole bunch of people will take the transfer just to skip the queue. Bear in mind that transfers do take some time. Right now it's apparently only a few minutes, but they warn that it could take up to a few hours, so depending on your queue time, you could end up waiting longer for the transfer, but that's probably only in really unfortunate circumstances. Either way, server transfers are now available, so Blizzard must at least be confident that we have enough players in Classic to spread around a handful of other servers. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about is the little section on Wowhead which has been highlighting the most popular guides over the last week or so. It's super interesting, and I know that not absolutely everyone uses Wowhead, so it's not going to be 100% representative, but I think enough people use the website to give us a good dollop of info. This list will show you the most popular guides right now and how they were doing yesterday. If you follow the lists as the days go by, you can see the interest in certain topics shift. For example, the guides for Deadmines and Ragefire Chasm were super popular for the first few days, but now their popularity is dwindling. That suggests that players are moving past those level ranges and moving on to some other dungeons, which you can also see from the Scarlet Monastery guides getting more popular as people get into the 30s and start working through that level bracket. Razorfen Crawl has popped into the top viewed as well, which suggests a lot of Horde players are getting to the 30 mark and wanting to run that dungeon as well as Scarlet Monastery. You know, it's kind of a pain for the Alliance to get to any of the good dungeons at this level, really, isn't it? The run to Scarlet Monastery is perilous and long, and running through the Barrens is just as bad sometimes for our boys in blue. Maybe I should have gone Horde after all. What's really interesting is that the tailoring guide has been number one for so long now. I guess everyone is valuing those bags very highly. It might have something to do with all the mages leveling as well, I guess. Typically tailoring is taken by cloth wearers more than anyone else alongside enchanting, so it's kind of surprising that enchanting is a little low on the list right now too. Maybe people want to leave leveling enchanting for later on, seeing as it's not the most important thing to level while leveling, certainly not as important as making bigger bags as often as you can. Bag space is the real end game of classic World of Warcraft, as we all know. If the class guides are anything to go by too, it looks like warriors and mages are the most popular classes right now, which really wouldn't surprise me either. This also could mean that more people are requiring help with those two classes though, which again wouldn't surprise me. Warriors are notoriously difficult to level on their own until they get some decent gear and get a few more abilities. They can die very, very often if they aren't careful. Mages on the other hand are the kings and queens of efficiency, but only if you know what you're doing. The most popular way to level a mage right now is the AoE farm big groups of melee mobs, so I guess some players will be looking for that kind of guide right now as well. Either way, warriors and mages seem to be the most researched classes at the moment, which means they're also probably the most played. I think these lists are super interesting, and following their patterns can give you glimpses of how the community is developing and what the majority of people are researching and investing in. Have a look through and see if there's any topics that you're interested in or that you've researched recently. How does this match up with what you're doing or what your friends are doing or what your guildies are doing? Wowhead might just be tracking you and your progress without you realizing it. But that's all I wanted to talk about in this video. What do you think about the layering issue in Classic WoW? Is it bad? Do you think it's bad? I think it might be a little bad. What kind of cooldown would you like to see implemented to stop people hopping layers so often and allowing them to abuse pretty much everything about the system? Would you consider the server transfers now that they're finally implemented and you can transfer a character instead of waiting in the queue? Some of those 4-hour queues are definitely tempting to just avoid, but Fairlina is such a good server. It's a hard choice for sure. Leave all your thoughts in the comments section below. A big thank you to all of our supporters over on Patreon. You can see their names floating by on screen. If you want to join these lovely guys and gals, you can find a link in the description below. Remember to leave a like just below the video before you leave, and if you want to see more, make sure to subscribe. But apart from that, thanks for watching folks, good luck and have fun, and as always I will see you next time.